Good morning. I'm so glad you decided to join me today for the first episode of Parenting for a New Generation. Today I'm going to talk to you about how and when to discipline a newborn. Now I know that title is offsetting and you might go, what? But the reason it is because for too long, too many people have understood the word discipline to mean punishment. And of course we don't mean that. Of course I don't think we're going to punish a newborn. Let's understand what discipline is, because this is going to be one of the groundwork rules of all the work we're going to do. The word discipline comes from the Latin root word disciplina, which means to educate. And it's closely related to another Latin root word, discere, which means to learn. So when we talk about discipline, we're going to talk about learning and educating, teaching and learning. And it's going to go both ways, because you will understand very quickly that you're going to learn a lot from your newborn. They're going to teach you what you need to do for them, because every baby is a little different, and you're not going to learn it from a book. You're going to learn it from your baby. So you will learn to understand and know what their responses mean. At this point, your little one has a very rudimentary central nervous system, which consists of the brain and the spinal cord. And in this system, there's 100 billion neurons. These neurons are rudimentary, they're undeveloped, and they really have, as far as we know, no cognition. They don't have understanding, and they're not going to recognize anything consciously that you're saying to them. They are going to experience the world and respond to it only through their senses. So their responses are going to be more, they're not going to be conscious. They're going to be coming from the autonomic or the sympathetic nervous system, and they're going to, they're just going to respond to their senses. So let's talk about that a little bit. They've been in a world that's pretty dark, and now they've come into a world that's bright, and you will see them open and close their eyes, because it's just an amazing new world for them. They have no idea or concept where they are, but they're attracted to the light, and they're attracted to things they see, movement, and they will respond to that. I just said blinking eyes, that's a response. So they don't think that this light is bright. They don't know it's light. They're just responding. They respond to things they're hearing, all kinds of new sounds around them, especially if they're in a hospital room or if it's a home birth. There are people talking. There are different voices. So they will respond to, for instance, the mother's voice, because they've been hearing that in utero, even though they didn't know what it was. And so they're going to respond to her voice. They're going to respond to her heartbeat when she lays them on her chest. And they're going to respond to her fragrance, her smell. They're going to respond to her touch when she holds them. They're going to sink into her comfort. They're going to in some way respond. Sometimes it's just as much as a rapid heartbeat or a movement. They may turn their face and look up to her to hear her voice. They will respond to taste. Even we see, I don't know that it's taste, but when we see in an ultrasound, a baby is sucking their thumb, that doesn't necessarily mean when they're born they're going to be able to suck. They may not be able to transfer that. Nursing mothers will tell you sometimes it takes a couple of hours for the baby to be able to what we call latch on to the breast, because that's a new response to them, and they don't necessarily have that yet. I want to introduce a psychological term that may be new to you, but it's an important one, and that is the mothering environment, also known as the holding environment. And what that is, it's a whole environment that can hold that baby and make him feel comfortable, make him feel safe. And so that holding environment will be the environment that he's born into. So first off, it includes the father, if the father is present, or if the father isn't present. I mean, sometimes, the father may be in the military and not there for the birth. And when that happens, generally the mother has somebody else that she's invited to be there. So that may be her mother, it may be her sister, it may be her good friend, it may be somebody else. But there's somebody else that's going to be some kind of a primary caregiver for this child. And so it also includes the sounds. It includes when you go home and you create this mothering and holding environment. Hopefully it will include just the house sounds of people talking and walking around, maybe fixing dinner, whatever that the child then becomes familiar with and feels safe with. As your child gets a little older, moms and the mothering environment will understand that when the baby is crying because they're hungry, as they get a little older and recognize the mother's voice, she can say, "I'm coming, I'm getting your formula ready, I'll be there," and they will stop crying sometimes and listen and quiet down because that environment is holding them. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how important that is to a child. I think it's important to understand that what you do from the moment your baby is born is beginning to build building blocks, a really good foundation for your child and for your parenting for the rest of your life. So here's one of the building blocks that I really want you to take seriously. I want you to look into the eyes of that little baby and say to him, "I promise that for the rest of your childhood, I will keep you safe and I will teach you. I'm going to teach you to be the best person possible that you can be." That's a commitment we need to make to our child, and we need to never veer from it. So one of the things you might hear me say in this series is one of the biggest mistakes that parents make is when their children get into middle school, they realize that this child is not who they wanted them to be, and they may be having some problems with them. So then they get real serious about parenting, and they might come to therapy, and their child is acting like they're 3 years old or 4 years old. They're obnoxious, they're obstinate, they can't cooperate, and the parents now are, "Oh, what do I do? What do I do?" We can change it at that point. We certainly can, and I'm living proof of that because I was kind of in that boat myself. The time to start is now. So let's talk about keeping your child safe. When you create this mothering environment that can hold your child, that's one of the first times of keeping them safe. They need to feel safe with you. They need to feel safe in their home, always. Let's see how we can do this. One of the ways that I was mentioning them learning with their senses is touch. It's interesting because there's two parts of the mothering body, and this would be the mother and the father and other primary caretakers. They're going to be fascinated with your eyes, and they're going to be fascinated with your hands, because when a newborn when you bring that baby home, they don't have a sense or the ability to understand that they're not part of the mother. They see that as, or they understand that as one unit. They don't see that they're separate from the mother. So it's really adorable when they're about 3 months old and they start looking at their hands like, what is that thing? And and then somewhere between 3 and 5 months, depending on each child, they begin to reach for things and, hey, I can use this, whatever this thing is. They also really notice the hands of the mother or the caretaker, and those hands provide everything for them. Their hands make them comfortable. Their hands respond when they cry because their diaper is uncomfortable. When they have hunger pains, those hands come and pick them up, and those hands put food in their mouth. So they are fascinated with their hands, but they don't understand the difference between the mother's hands, and they don't even realize they have hands yet. So, and you will notice that when you feed a baby, they look into your eyes, and as they get older, they will say, I see me in your eyes, and they see the reflection. I'm one of those people that believe that the eyes are the window of the soul. Now, you can decide what soul means to you. It means different things to different people, and some people say, well, we don't have a soul. Well, I believe we do, because I look into the eyes of a newborn, and there's a deep connection without cognition and without words. They don't understand what they're looking at, but they're drawn to that. And I've also looked into the eyes of sociopaths. And when you do, one of the things that's so sad is that you see that there's a blankness there. They're not connecting at a deeper level. And it's like they're not capable of it. I also, you will know this about me, I follow the teachings of psychologist Carl Jung. And my actual psychological degree is in depth psychology, which acknowledges the presence of a soul. Now, some people call that the higher self. Some people might call it your best self. You are connecting with your infant at this level, and it's just a wonderful experience. The point is that you are making a commitment, and you could even call it a covenant if you wanted to. You are going to be there and keep that child safe, and you are going to teach them. So as we're going to go through some of these stages, that teaching isn't always easy. At this point, it pretty much is. So one of the things we know that is going to keep our baby from crying and hurting is to make them feel safe. And one of the ways that humans have been doing this, mothers have been doing this, and grandmothers since the beginning of time, is swaddling your baby. And I'm so happy that that's become popular again, and that young parents are doing this. They need to be swaddled and held intact, because this little infant has no concept that they have skin and that they have a body. They don't know where their body begins and ends. They don't even know they have one. When we cuddle them and hold them, they feel their skin because we're touching it. One of the best practices that I just love is today in the hospitals, and I think if you have a home birth, I think the people there probably do the same thing. But they encourage the mother to put the naked baby next to her skin and hold her. And they tell the father, take your shirt off, take your undershirt off. Here, and then the father gets that. That baby feels so safe because remember, for all those months, that baby has been held by the mother's body. And so that makes them feel safe. We do that with swaddling. And another way we do that you may not be aware of, but when I learned it, I thought it was pretty fascinating. There's something that is automatic in humans that when we see the cuteness of the infant, it connects with something in us in an unconscious way that automatically makes us start petting the baby. And you will see, everybody that holds a baby will do that. We stroke its body, we feel its toes, we feel its hands, and we just do that. Actually, we do the same thing with kittens and puppies. Any mammal that's newborn has a certain cuteness about it that makes us want to hold it and makes us want to pet it. That has a very important contribution to the infant because that makes them feel their body and that makes them feel safe. We also know that infants that are neglected, I've heard about it more in foreign countries after a war when there's babies being born and not enough adults to take care of them. Orphan children who don't get touched and who don't get that petting. That building block is not there for the rest of their life. So we need to do that. I remember when I brought my little son home from the hospital, and I was 20 years old, and I had him laying in my lap, and I looked at him and I thought, oh my God. I was so frightened because it just hit me that I was going to be responsible for who he became. And everything he needed was going to be coming from me, especially in the first few years. It was overwhelming. And I thought I knew a lot about children and babies at this point, but it let me know that I had so much to learn. Teaching and learning is so important. And I remember when he was really small, that first week, and I went in for my first follow-up appointment, I had told the nurse that I was really concerned because I couldn't keep my hands off of him. I hardly let him sleep. He would be sleeping in his crib or his bassinet at the time, and I would go scoop him up in my hands without waking him and hold him through his whole nap. And I remember my mom saying to me, "You're going to spoil that baby." And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm ruining him. And when I said that to the nurse, she said, "A baby can never have too much TLC." I didn't know what that meant. I had never heard that term, and I thought, I don't even think I have any of that. What is it? And I thought maybe it was some kind of a vitamin or something. And I said, "I don't have any TLC." And she said, "No, honey, that means tender, loving care." And I went, oh. And that kind of just informed me probably, I think, his whole life. You can't ever love them too much. And so I really want you to understand that you can't hold your infant too much. You can't pet them too much. You can't sing to them too often. You can't talk to them too often. You just need to let them know always at this point that you're there. Now, a little bit later, they're going to break that kind of a bond. And we'll get to that point when we get to that point. But right now, what you want to do is to teach them that they are safe and let them teach you about what they need. And you're going to be just fine with them. There's something that I think we do need to talk about in keeping children safe. This can be very difficult, and you might not want to hear it, but I'm going to say it anyway. You really need to be aware of keeping your child safe. You need to be very careful who you want to be around them, especially at this age, because you cannot go to them later and explain to them anything because they don't have the ability to understand. So it's your job, if you know anybody, and this includes your family, especially to focus on your family, your mother, your father, your siblings, your best friends. If you know anybody that you know has had a problem controlling their anger, they should not be around your child. And maybe this is going to be difficult, but you have to say it. You do not want your child, your infant, to be around people who are screaming and yelling and swearing and throwing things and breaking things. If you have that in your life, you need to remove it now. You need to say to them, I don't want you to be around my baby because I know that you have a hard time controlling your anger. And the only time you're going to be around the baby is when I know you have gone to treatment, and I mean with a licensed therapist, not your best friend, not a school counselor. You're going to go into therapy with a licensed therapist and learn to control your anger. And if they're not willing to do that, then they're not going to see the baby. And it's not because you're doing something to them. They're choosing it themselves. They're harming themselves, and they need help, and your baby is not going to be their victim. It's a very difficult thing to do, but you have that responsibility. The next thing I'm going to say is in the same light, and that is, if you know somebody who habitually, let me change that. If you live with somebody who habitually gets drunk or has been drunk in the last 6 months in your presence, in your home, they cannot be around your baby. They need to get into treatment with a licensed therapist and probably go to AA, because that is going to contaminate your holding environment or your mothering environment. And one episode of that can harm your baby forever. You do not want somebody like that. So if they're using drugs and they're high, or they're drinking too much and they're drunk, then they cannot be around your baby, period. This is just not negotiable. And so that's, I think, the most important thing to keep your baby safe. Now, I can tell you that if you go in a classroom of a first and second grader, you can watch how the children act, and you can tell which ones of those come from a home where there's violence, where they don't feel safe, because they're constantly trying to push people away from them. They don't know, they're trying to control their environment. Your child at any age should not be the one that's trying to control the environment in your home. That is your job. And please, please, please seek help to learn how to do that, or get somebody to help you do that. If you have a hard time making that statement, try to get a friend or a sibling or somebody, a pastor, anybody to sit with you and help you do that. Now, sometimes parents say, well, yes, we were drinking and we did get a little drunk, but the kids were in bed. Well, I think experienced parents will tell you that kids know what's going on. They know what is going on. So you think they don't know, but they know. When when you have a newborn, remember they're only experiencing through their senses. So even in their sleep, they can hear and they can feel tension. They don't know they're feeling tension. They don't know why they're feeling tension. And that even makes it more difficult for them. So I just want to stress, because I'm a psychologist, I'm not a medical doctor. I don't so much deal with the physical body. I deal with the emotional body. And I'm telling you, if you disturb this nervous system or wound it of an infant, that's never going to be undone. So you need to be aware of it. And actually, taking care of a baby at this point with the central nervous system is probably the most enjoyable and easiest part of parenting. But you do have to set that environment. Just know that your little infant, when you hold them, is a miracle. And it's the most beautiful time probably with you in their lifetime. I mean, as they grow, you'll experience all the different celebrations in their life. They're going to kindergarten, going to school, all the things they do in school, sports, graduations. All of those things are going to be special, but I don't think any of them are as special as holding that little newborn. I believe, I'm very convinced with this, that when that newborn comes home, we have to understand that the mother, and now I'm talking about the physical mother, the woman, has just been through something very, very difficult. And she cannot and should not be expected to do this by herself. She needs another person who will partner with her, and hopefully that's the child's father. But again, if he's not available, then it needs to be her mother, her best friend, her grandmother, somebody who will say, you sleep through the night, I will take the feeding. I will do the middle of the night feeding. You get your sleep. You get your body back where it needs to be. You take some rest. Because too often what happens is the child comes to this home and the parents are exhausted. And it's easy to start arguing and fighting and getting depressed, and none of this helps postpartum depression. I can tell you this, that one of the best cures for depression is sleep. And I will also say that many of us today are sleep deprived. And when that happens, things always go downhill. Inability to sleep well is also a symptom of depression. So if you're not sleeping well, you're going to get depressed, and then your depression indicates you're not sleeping well. So that's the first best medication for depression, is a good night's sleep. And the mother needs that more than anybody, because her body has just been through a tremendous challenge. So she needs help. Find help. Get somebody who will spend the night for the first few nights, maybe even the first week, so that they will be up and be there. And I know it's hard. Everybody doesn't have these people in their life, but do your best with that. So I'm really glad you joined us today. I hope this was helpful for you and interesting. And I hope you'll join us for the next episode, which is going to be a map for the journey, which is going to tell us where we're going in this education and keeping the child safe, from newborn to, well, maybe around 21. So I want to thank you for being with us, and be kind to others. That's so important.